I was standing inside a warehouse in Dallas, watching a screen refresh in real time while a logistics manager yelled into his headset like his life depended on it. "We lost another 47 packages this week!" He slammed his hand on the table. Nobody in the room looked surprised. That was the scary part. This was just normal. Then the guy next to me leaned over and said something that stuck in my head. "If this system doesn't improve, we're bleeding millions a year." Millions. And the crazy thing, nobody in that room actually knew where half the packages were. I remember just standing there, quietly, like I didn't belong, because a few years earlier, I wasn't in boardrooms or warehouses or logistics meetings. I was sitting in a cramped back office of a delivery company, drinking gas station coffee at 3 a.m., trying to figure out why packages kept disappearing like ghosts. My job was simple, or at least it was supposed to be. Track shipments, fix issues, answer complaints. But nothing was simple. Packages got delayed, scanned wrong, marked delivered when they weren't. Sometimes they just vanished. And every time something went wrong, guess who got blamed? The system. Or more specifically, me. One night I was going through reports when I noticed something weird. Not a small mistake, a pattern. Lost packages weren't random. They were clustered. Same hubs, same routes, same time windows. It wasn't chaos. It was predictable chaos. And that changed everything in my head. Because if something's predictable, it can be fixed. But the company didn't see it that way. To them, it was just logistics problems, normal industry noise. They'd say stuff like, "That's just shipping," or "loss rate is acceptable." Acceptable. Like losing thousands of packages a month was just the cost of doing business. That word bothered me more than anything. Acceptable. One night, I stayed late after my shift and started digging deeper than I was supposed to. I pulled delivery data from different hubs, compared timestamps, mapped routes on my laptop like some kind of obsessed conspiracy guy. And that's when I saw it. A blind spot. A gap in the system where tracking basically made no sense. Packages weren't being lost randomly. They were being lost where visibility dropped, where nobody was watching closely enough. I leaned back in my chair and just stared at the screen, because for the first time, I wasn't looking at lost packages. I was looking at a broken system. And broken systems don't just fail people, they create opportunities. I didn't know it yet, but that night, I stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like someone who could actually build something. Something that might track every single package that everyone else was losing. And I had no idea that this idea was about to drag me out of a dead-end job and straight into a world I wasn't ready for. The next morning, I showed up to work like nothing happened. That's the funny thing about ideas like that. You can't tell anyone, because the second you do, it either gets shut down or stolen or just ignored until you stop believing in it yourself. So I kept my mouth shut. But in my head, it was already too late. I wasn't doing my job anymore. I was studying it. Every scan, every delay, every missing package ticket that came through the system. And the more I looked, the worse it got. It wasn't just lost packages. It was no accountability. One hub would scan something wrong, and 3 cities later, nobody could trace where the mistake happened. Everyone was pointing fingers, but nobody had full visibility. It was like a group chat where everyone deletes their messages and then argues about what was said. One night, I was grabbing food at a gas station after my shift when I saw a delivery van pull up. Driver looked exhausted, like properly cooked. He was unloading packages alone, scanning them one by one with a cheap handheld device that kept lagging. I walked over and asked him casually, "Ever lose packages on your route?" He laughed immediately. "You mean every week?" Then he said something that hit me harder than I expected. "Half the time, I don't even know if I'm getting blamed for my mistakes or someone else's." That was it. That sentence. Because that wasn't just frustration. That was confusion baked into the system. And confusion is expensive. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about one thing. What if packages didn't just get tracked at checkpoints? What if they were tracked continuously? Not scanned at arrival, not updated when someone remembers, but live, real-time visibility from warehouse to doorstep. It sounded simple in my head, but I didn't know anything about building systems like that. I wasn't a software engineer. I wasn't a founder. I was just a guy who noticed something broken and couldn't unsee it anymore. So I did what broke people with ideas usually do. I started Googling APIs, tracking systems, logistics software, GPS integrations. Most of it went over my head, but one thing kept coming up. Nobody had really solved this problem well at scale. Not properly, not in a way that worked across multiple carriers. That's when the idea stopped being just frustration and started becoming something dangerous. A concept, a product, something I could actually build. But I had two problems: no money, no team, and a third one I didn't fully understand yet. I had no idea how hard logistics companies would fight change. Still, I couldn't let it go, because once you see the cracks in a system like that, you don't really get to pretend it's normal anymore. I didn't quit my job right away. Honestly, I couldn't afford to. So I started building this thing in the only way I knew how. Nights, weekends, and whatever energy I had left after shifts that already drained me dry. At first, it wasn't even a product. It was just me trying to connect dots, spreadsheets, notes, random diagrams on my laptop that looked like conspiracy boards if you squinted hard enough. I started mapping how packages move through the system: warehouse to hub to truck to hub to delivery to customer. And at every step, there was a gap, a place where information got lost, delayed, or just guessed. That word stuck with me. Guessed. Because that's what a lot of logistics really was underneath all the fancy software. Guesswork dressed up as precision. One night, I tried reaching out to a freelancer online. I didn't have much money, so I didn't even pretend like I was a big client. I just said, "I'm trying to build a real-time package tracking system, not just scans, live visibility." Most people didn't even reply. One guy did, probably because I sounded desperate enough to be interesting. We started small, very small, a basic prototype that could simulate tracking updates in real time. Nothing fancy, but the first time I saw a package icon move across the screen live, I literally sat back in my chair like, wait. Because even though it was fake data, the concept felt real. It felt like something the industry should already have. That's when I made my first mistake. I thought the hard part was building it. Turns out, building it was the easy part. Getting anyone to care was something completely different. I reached out to small logistics companies first, email after email. No replies, then not interested, then straight up ignored. One guy replied and said, "We already have a system. It works fine." Which was funny because I was literally building something that existed because those systems weren't working fine. Still, I kept going, because every time I looked at the data, I kept seeing the same thing. Lost packages weren't random. They were expensive, and nobody was really measuring the full cost. Not just the package value, but customer support time, refunds, chargebacks, lost trust, brand damage. It was way bigger than anyone admitted. Then, one day, I got lucky. A small regional logistics company in Nevada replied. Short email, one line. "If you think this can reduce losses, come show us." No hype, no interest, just a challenge. And for the first time, I felt something shift. Because this wasn't me emailing into the void anymore. This was someone willing to look. I booked a bus ticket the same night, didn't even think twice. And that trip is where everything started to get real. That bus ride to Nevada felt like I was heading into something I wasn't qualified for. I kept staring out the window, thinking the same thing on repeat. What am I even doing? I wasn't a founder. I wasn't a salesman. I wasn't even a proper engineer. I was just a guy with a prototype and way too much confidence for his own good. The logistics company office was nothing fancy. Small building, industrial area, Forklifts outside, delivery trucks coming and going non-stop like a heartbeat. The operations manager met me at the entrance. He didn't smile much. "You're the tracking guy?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "something like that." He nodded like he didn't expect much, which, honestly, I respected. Inside, they showed me their current system, and it was exactly what I expected. Scanners, manual updates, delayed logs, a lot of clicking and guessing. Then he said the sentence that basically summarized their entire operation. If it's not scanned, it doesn't exist. That stuck with me, because in their world, visibility only existed when someone manually created it. I opened my laptop and showed them my prototype. Real-time tracking visualization, simulated data flow, a live map of package movement between hubs. At first, nobody reacted, just silence. Then one of the supervisors leaned in. "So this shows everything, even between scans?" I nodded. "Yeah, that's the point." He squinted at the screen. "That's not how our system works." I looked at him and said something I probably shouldn't have said out loud. "That's exactly the problem." That got a reaction. Not anger, just attention. They asked me to explain more, so I did. I broke it down in plain language. No buzzwords, no AI-powered optimization nonsense. Just, you're losing visibility between checkpoints. That's where mistakes happen. That's where packages disappear in the system. And the more I talked, the more I saw it on their faces. They already knew. They just hadn't seen it visualized like this before. Then came the real test. They gave me access to a small route, just one corridor between two hubs. "If your system works, prove it here," they said. No contract, no promise, just a test. I went back to my motel that night and barely slept, because now it wasn't theory anymore. It was real data, real expectations, real consequences if I messed it up. For the next 2 weeks, I lived on energy drinks and panic, fixing bugs, adjusting logic, rebuilding parts of the system that broke under real-world data. And then it happened. The dashboard started showing actual movement, not simulated, real package flow, real delays, real gaps in tracking. And for the first time, I saw exactly where their system was failing in real time. I sent the report, then waited, and waited, and waited. Then my phone rang. I almost didn't answer the call, because when your entire life is riding on a single maybe, even your phone ringing feels like a threat. But I picked up. The operations manager didn't say hello at first, just a pause. Then, "Yeah, so we ran your system for the full route." My stomach dropped. That tone can go either way. It's never neutral. He continued, "We're seeing things we've never seen before." I sat up immediately, not because it sounded good, but because it sounded real. He started listing it out. Packages that were lost for hours but actually just stuck in transfer gaps. Hubs where scanning delays created false disappearance reports. Routes where drivers were overloaded but nobody had the visibility to redistribute workload. Then he said the line that changed everything. "We've been overestimating our efficiency for years." That hit hard, because in logistics, efficiency is everything. Or at least everyone thinks it is. After the call, they brought me back in. This time, it wasn't just operations. Finance was there. That's when you know things got serious. They showed me their numbers. And I mean real numbers, not the cleaned-up version. The actual cost of lost packages, refunds, customer complaints, support tickets, contract penalties. And I remember sitting there realizing something uncomfortable. The small problem I thought I was solving wasn't small at all. It was bleeding money across the entire system. One of the finance guys looked at me and said, "If this scales, it changes everything." I tried to stay calm, but inside I was losing it. Because this wasn't just validation, this was leverage, the kind that turns a side project into a company. They agreed to extend the pilot. More routes, more hubs, more data. And for the first time, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was operating inside a real system. But that's also when the pressure started to change. Because now I wasn't building in the dark. People were watching and expecting results. I had to hire someone, then another. Then, suddenly, I had a tiny team working out of a shared office space that smelled like burnt coffee and cheap furniture. We were moving fast, too fast sometimes. Servers breaking under load, data inconsistencies popping up, clients asking for features we hadn't even thought about yet. And every time something broke, I'd get this sinking feeling like, if I don't fix this fast enough, this whole thing collapses. But there was no going back anymore, because word was spreading. Other logistics companies started calling, asking questions, wanting demos. Suddenly, we weren't just the guy with the prototype. We were becoming a real system in an industry that hates change. And that's when the first big investor email came in. Subject line: scaling opportunity, urgent discussion. I stared at it for a long time, because I knew what that meant. We were no longer a project. We were a target. The first investor meeting didn't feel like an opportunity. It felt like an inspection. They didn't ask if the product worked. They asked how long it would keep working under pressure. Big difference. We met in a downtown office in Chicago. Glass walls, polished floors, the kind of place where people don't raise their voice because even their stress looks expensive. There were 3 of them, private equity guys, not startup people, not let's change the world guys, the show me the numbers or I'm gone in 10 seconds type. One of them leaned back and said, "So you're telling me you can track every package in real time across multiple carriers?" I nodded. Yes. He didn't react. Just, "And you're saying no one else is doing this properly?" I hesitated for half a second, because the honest answer was some people were trying, but not like this, not at this level of visibility. So I said, not in a way that actually reduces losses end to end. That got their attention. Then came the deeper questions: revenue model, retention rates, data infrastructure, scalability limits, the kind of stuff that separates ideas from companies. And I'll be honest, I wasn't ready for all of it. Not fully, but I knew the problem better than anyone in the room, so I leaned into that. I stopped trying to sound perfect and just explained what I had seen. Packages disappearing between scans, companies overpaying for visibility that wasn't real, customers blaming brands for failures they couldn't even trace. By the end of the meeting, they didn't look impressed, they looked interested, which is way more dangerous, because impressed people clap, interested people invest. They offered a pilot expansion, not a check yet, a test, enterprise scale, multiple logistics partners, real stakes. I left that building and stood outside for a long time. Traffic moving, people walking, phones buzzing. And I remember thinking, this is where most things either break or become real. Back in our office, everything changed overnight. We had to upgrade infrastructure fast. Our little system wasn't little anymore. It was handling live data from multiple logistics networks. Errors that used to be annoying became critical. One wrong calculation could mess up entire routes. We hired engineers we could barely afford. We onboarded clients faster than our support system could handle. At one point, I was personally answering technical emails at 2 a.m. while fixing server issues in the background. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos, the good kind, if that even exists. Then came the moment everything shifted again. One of the enterprise pilots called us, not to complain, not to ask for fixes, but to say something I wasn't expecting. We're seeing a measurable drop in lost packages. I didn't even respond at first, just sat there, because that's the moment you stop being a startup and start becoming infrastructure. But with that came something else, pressure from competitors noticing us, clients expecting perfection, and investors starting to talk about scale like it was already guaranteed.
One evening, after everyone left the office, I sat alone looking at the dashboard. Packages moving across the map in real time, thousands of them, across systems that used to be completely blind. And I realized something uncomfortable. We didn't just build a product, we built something people were going to depend on. And if it failed, it wouldn't just be our problem anymore.
The weird thing about scaling a system that actually works is that nobody cares how hard it was to build it. They only care when it stops working. And we found that out the hard way. It started small, a latency issue in one region, then a data sync bug in another. Nothing catastrophic at first, just enough to make my phone start buzzing at weird hours again. 2:14 a.m., 3:47 a.m., 5:03 a.m. Each time I'd wake up, open my laptop, and feel that familiar knot in my stomach. Except now it wasn't just one hotel manager waiting on me, it was entire logistics networks, multiple companies, real operations depending on our systems staying alive. That's when I realized something nobody tells you about building infrastructure. Success doesn't reduce stress, it multiplies it fast. We stabilized things eventually. New engineers fixed parts I didn't even fully understand anymore. That was another strange feeling, watching your own system evolve past your ability to manually control it. It stopped being my project, it became a machine. Then came the call, the one I knew was coming but still wasn't ready for. Private equity, again. But this time it wasn't a meeting, it was an offer, a real one. I remember sitting in my apartment staring at the number on my screen without blinking. It didn't feel real at first. My brain actually rejected it, like it was too large to compute. Years of work, sleepless nights, failed prototypes, burned out servers, all reduced into a single line on a spreadsheet. And the first thing I felt wasn't excitement, it was silence. Because the question wasn't, is this life-changing money? It was, what happens to everything I built if I'm not the one running it anymore? So I did something I didn't expect. I went back, not to the office, not to investors, but to the first warehouse where I ever tested the system. Same environment, same kind of noise, same kind of chaos, packages moving everywhere, workers scanning, loading, arguing, rushing. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was inside the system. I felt like I was outside it, watching it work without me. That's when it hit me. The goal was never to own it forever. The goal was to fix something broken enough that it didn't need me anymore. A week later, I signed the deal. No dramatic speech, no celebration in the moment, just a signature that quietly ended one chapter of my life. After that, everything happened fast. Money, headlines, meetings, calls I didn't even have to take anymore. And then one day, I found myself alone again. Same guy, different life. I used to think the ending would feel like an arrival, but it didn't. It felt like distance, because you don't really finish something like this. You just move on from it. Now when I think back, it still doesn't feel like a success story in the way people expect. It feels more like a pattern I noticed too early and refused to ignore. A broken system, a simple idea, a lot of risk, and just enough obsession to see it through. And if I had to sum it all up in one sentence, I didn't get lucky. I just stayed curious long enough to notice what everyone else walked past.
Before you go, hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable stories just like this one. See you in the next story.